At the end of the 2012-2013 NBA season, the Brooklyn Nets finished at 49-33 and lost Game 7 in the first round of the playoffs to a Chicago Bulls team that featured a young Jimmy Butler. Changes were obviously needed if the Nets wanted to advance further and make a title run, but what they would do next would doom the franchise for years to come. The Brooklyn Nets and Boston Celtics agreed to a trade that would send Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, and DJ White to the Nets, and the Celtics would get back 3 future first-round picks, 1 pick swap, and 5 players. The Nets were obviously desperate to win now by trading for 3 aging players on the edge of retirement. Kevin Garnett was 37 years old. Paul Pierce was 35 years old, and Jason Terry was 36. And the Celtics gained massive, valuable draft capital for 3 players whose careers were almost over. The 2016 first-round pick included in this deal for the Celtics became Jaylen Brown. The 2017 pick, Jason Tatum. Boston set themselves up for years, maybe even decades to come. And all that the Nets got out of this trade was a second-round loss to the Miami Heat in 2014. And just to pile it on, Paul Pierce left Brooklyn that summer and signed with the Washington Wizards. Some say that this is the worst trade in the history of the NBA, but there was a trade this past year that is already rivaling this awful deal. And that trade is the deal that the Minnesota Timberwolves made for Rudy Gobert. In the summer of 2022, fans were shocked when news broke of the massive amount of players and picks that Rudy Gobert was being traded for. In the deal, Gobert was traded for 4 current NBA players in Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Jared Vanderbilt, and Leandro Bolmaro. Beasley, Beverley, and Vanderbilt are good rotational players, but giving them up for Gobert is understandable. But what devastated the Timberwolves were the massive amount of picks included too. The Jazz essentially got 5 first-round picks, with the 2023, 25, and 27 first-round picks being unprotected, the 2029 pick being top 5 protected, and just for a cherry on top, they got the 22nd pick in the 2022 draft that the Timberwolves picked that summer, and Walker Kessler. And after seeing the 2022-23 season play out, Walker Kessler looked very similar to Rudy Gobert, and Minnesota would have been virtually in the same position if they kept him, along with all of their picks and players. Kessler finished his first season earning first-team All-Rookie honors. He was 4th in the NBA in both blocks per game and total blocks, and he finished 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting. Does that sound like a bad move for Minnesota now? It was. But taking a closer look at Kessler and Gobert's stats, it only starts to look worse. In his 10th season in the league, and at age 30, which is probably entering the backside of his prime in the NBA, Rudy Gobert averaged 13.4 points per game, 11.6 rebounds, 1.2 assists, 1.4 blocks per game, and a PER of 18.9. Walker Kessler in his first season in the NBA, and age 21, averaged 9.2 points, 8.4 rebounds, 0.9 assists, 2.3 blocks, and a PER of 21.5. At first glance, Gobert does seem like the better player, but by a very small gap. This small gap evaporates when you take into account their minutes per game. Gobert achieved his stats in 30.7 minutes per game. Kessler only played 23 minutes per game. When we shift Gobert and Kessler's stats to a per 36 minutes basis, everything changes. When playing equal minutes per game, Kessler's points, rebounds, assists, and steals are almost identical to Gobert's. The punch in the face to Timberwolves fans are the blocks per game, which Kessler averages 2 more per game than Gobert, while Rudy's reputation in the league is a rim protector. Going into next season, Rudy Gobert for Walker Kessler as a straight up trade with no additional picks or players involved seems like an unfair deal. Unfair for whoever's giving up Kessler. And giving up 4 future first round picks in addition to Kessler, Pat Bev, Jared Vanderbilt, and Malik Beasley is insane. Just a few weeks ago, the 16th pick in the 2023 draft that the Jazz acquired from the Timberwolves in this deal became Keontae George, who is a 6'4" guard from Baylor, where he averaged 15.3 points, 4.2 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.1 steals, and 2.3 three-pointers per game while on his way to the Big 12 Rookie of the Year honors. George was also on an all Big 12 second team and a Big 12 all freshman team selection. And if he somehow doesn't work out for Utah, don't worry, the 2025, 2027, and 2029 first-round picks that are included in this deal are still available, which they can either use to draft a key player or use as a trade piece. The future is looking bright for the Jazz, and for the Timberwolves, the best thing that I can say is that the future looks uncertain. Anthony Edwards is an emerging superstar, as he just earned himself a 5-year, $260 million extension with the Wolves. He really has a chance to change the franchise, and he has shown flashes of greatness in his young career. He has overtaken Cat as the star of this team and just needs to lead them to victory. Karl Anthony Towns is a solid all-star level player who can score, but just not consistently. In the postseason, Cat's stats dropped from an all-star level to a role player, averaging 6 less points per game on 47% shooting from the field. For Minnesota to truly succeed, he needs to be consistent. And throwing Rudy Gobert into that mix only made things worse. When the Timberwolves had Rudy Gobert on the court with them last season, the team went 34-36, a 48.6 win percentage. Without Rudy Gobert on the court, the team went 8-4, a win percentage of 66.7%. The Timberwolves obviously had trouble fitting Gobert into their lineups and struggled to use him effectively. As I mentioned earlier, Gobert is known as a defensive anchor and rim protector, and he's earned that title with 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards and 6 All-Defensive Team selections. But this past season, he averaged 1.4 blocks, which is the first time that he has averaged less than 2 blocks per game since his rookie year. Minnesota needs to figure out how to get the best out of Gobert and how to fit him in a consistent lineup with Edwards and Cat. And they need to do that quick, because the trade that the Wolves made for Gobert made their future and draft capital look slim, and mediocrity in both the regular season and postseason will not be tolerated by superstar level players like Edwards, who they need to keep in Minnesota. If the Wolves don't figure out this team and Gobert continues his lackluster production, this massive haul of players and picks that was given up for Rudy Gobert could go down as the worst trade in NBA history.